Could you imagine if everyone who claimed to be Christian, if everyone in the United States who went to church on Sunday and raised their hands and said, "Praise Jesus," if every one of them would stop worrying about their building or stop worrying about how they're going to fund the new addition or how they're going to upgrade things in that building? Could you imagine if everyone in those churches quit worrying about expensive guitars and lights and smoke machines? Could you imagine if the pastors of those churches stopped putting 90% of your tithes and offerings in their pockets? Could you imagine if the churches, instead of doing that in the United States, could you imagine if they stepped out of their buildings and they started to focus and search for the things that Jesus searched for, the least of these, the needy people, the hungry people? Could you imagine if everyone in the churches in America prayed for the Holy Spirit to come upon them and truly feel the nudge of that Spirit leading them to the things of God, leading them to the needy, leading them to the widows, leading them to the orphans? Could you imagine if all of them paid attention to what the Holy Spirit was telling them, if they truly were filled? Could you imagine if every one of those people in those churches went outside that building and cast out demons? Could you imagine if everyone in the churches in the United States went around and started healing the sick? Could you imagine if they could even raise people from the dead? You know, I share this with you because what you're imagining, what I showed you, is what the disciples saw. This is what they saw. They didn't have a building. They went out and they healed. They prayed for the Holy Spirit, and then they listened to it. They paid attention to it. And they went out and they cared for the least of these. They healed the sick, and they raised people from the dead. And the church grew by leaps and bounds. You know, I think what we're looking at today is a situation. If Jesus came back and you invited him to church and he came with you, I think afterwards he would say, "That was a really awesome show. Now when do we do church?" Because what the church is it's not a building, it's a group of people. And the bride of Christ is whoring herself out for profit. It's a show. It is literally a show. She is being whored out for profit by a few men, by only a few men, bringing in billions, if not trillions of dollars into their own pockets. Could you imagine if that stopped? And could you imagine if all those people, those sheep that they were leading astray, can you imagine if they, instead of turning to the one asking for the prophet, could you imagine if they turned to the Holy Spirit? Could you imagine? This world would be transformed within the hour. The whole world would be aware of who Jesus Christ is, and they'd be aware of his power, and they would witness his power. All they're witnessing now is a show that makes them feel warm fuzzies. That's it. It's not what we are meant to do, ladies and gentlemen. So I just want you to take a moment and truly just imagine what could be if Christians just behaved like Christians. Love to hear your thoughts on all that. Put it in the comments below. If you like this video, click like and subscribe. Feel called to support this channel to Patreon. That link is also below. But the most important part of this channel is we take prayer requests, so please don't ever hesitate to send that in. Thank you for watching this episode of God, Family, and Guns. And as always, love God, love your family, and love guns.